15 years ago, a child disappeared after a fatal crash, presumed dead, mourned, and forgotten by the world. But one woman never stopped searching, never stopped listening for a voice that might still call her mother. Then, one summer morning, a news report revealed a girl found in a hidden bunker, confused, terrified, and clinging to a name that wasn't hers. What if she'd been alive all along, but taught to forget who she was? Hanover, New Hampshire. Summer, 2024. The wooden house stood there, silent on the edge of the forest, like a creature that had forgotten how to make a sound. The stained planks, the moss-covered eaves, and the bougainvillea vines winding around the windows, all were imbued with a stillness that didn't belong to summer. No longer the laughter of children, no longer the sound of car engines starting each morning, only the sound of wind whistling through the old pine trees and, occasionally, the quiet breath of the woman sitting in the shade by the window. Emma Lawrence. It was July 14th. Every year, Emma remembered it very clearly. No need for marking, no need for reminders. Her body knew instinctively. Her knuckles would ache a little more as the morning broke. Her chest would tighten without a cough, and her heart, like an old clock, would naturally ring an invisible chime. It was time to bring flowers to the windowsill. On the kitchen table, 3 flowers carefully chosen by her. A pure white chrysanthemum for Michael, her husband, who had passed away with the shattered SUV at the bottom of a ravine. A deep purple forget-me-not for Elena, her twin daughter with a heart bigger than her small body. And finally, a pale green heather for Ellie, her daughter whom she still could not and would never believe was dead. Emma placed each flower on a wooden tray, stepping out onto the porch in her worn slippers. The early sunlight filtered through the trees, shining obliquely on her face, revealing delicate wrinkles like scratches from time. She bent down, gently placing the 3 flowers on the windowsill. Just like every year. No changes, no words, only the wind and the pungent smell of pine resin. But this year was different. As Emma went back inside, she turned on the old TV, not intending to watch anything specific, but to fill the house with the sound of human voices. The screen flickered for a moment, then stabilized, showing the morning news from the local station. Rescued after 11 years of captivity in a bunker near the New York-Canada border. The girl is currently unable to provide clear identification. Authorities are calling her Leah, as she calls herself. She is being cared for at a victim support center in Albany. Emma slowed down. Her eyes were glued to the screen. According to doctors, the girl shows signs of severe amnesia, possibly due to prolonged psychological trauma. However, center staff say she exhibits a fear of men and often repeats phrases like, "Only daddy," "Don't remember," and the name Leah written hundreds of times each day. Then the image appeared, not clear, not a direct shot. But in a split second, Emma felt as if someone had drained the blood from her palm. That face, those eyes, impossible, impossible. She slumped into a chair, clutching her chest as if to keep her heart from exploding. Part of her wanted to stand up, turn off the TV, forget it. The other part, the part that had been whispering every night for the past 15 years, was screaming, "It's her! It's Ellie! It's really her!" But reason immediately fought back. Don't be delusional, Emma. Don't fall back into the labyrinth of hope like in those first years. Don't dig a grave for yourself. She gasped for breath. She felt suffocated between reality and memory. A warning scrolled across the screen with the contact information for the support center. Emma grabbed a pen, her hand trembling violently, writing down the number as if just a second longer. It would vanish. She called. The line was busy. Called again. The ringing stretched on like the countdown of fate. "Albany Support Center, this is..." A female voice, young but tired. "I'm Emma Lawrence. I think the girl named Leah you're caring for might be my daughter. Ellie Lawrence, missing for 15 years. Silence on the other end for a few seconds. "Ma'am, could you provide identifying information?" Is there a DNA profile? Yes. I submitted it to the police that year. I can bring photos. Anything you need. Okay, please come to the center. But I need to warn you, the girl currently doesn't remember anything, doesn't recognize anyone, doesn't even know her real name. Emma nodded, even though no one on the other end could see it. I don't need her to remember. I just need to see her. The call ended. Everything in the house seemed muted. Even the ticking of the clock seemed to stop, giving way to the sound of her heart beating clearly, strongly, full of anticipation, a feeling she thought had died with the grave of her husband and daughter. On the windowsill, the 3 flowers remained still in the sunlight. But this year, the 3rd heather flower trembled slightly in the wind, as if reviving a silent beat. Emma looked at it, her eyes welling up, and whispered, "Mom is coming. This time, I definitely won't come back empty-handed." And she stood up, packed old photos into her bag, put on a light jacket, fastened the buttons. She would go. Find the daughter she never gave up on. Find Ellie. Even if she had to overcome countless more illusions. The St. Halley Psychological Recovery Center was located on the outskirts of Albany, hidden behind tall pine trees and nondescript beige walls. The building didn't have the look of a hospital. It resembled an old boarding school with wooden eaves and a backyard planted with wild daisies, leaving newcomers with a vague feeling of peace and fragility. Emma arrived in the afternoon. The sky was light gray, like water that hadn't yet reflected anything, and she sat quietly on the long waiting bench facing a wall covered with patient drawings. Children's drawings with simple stick figures, houses with 3 windows, smiling suns. But for some reason, she felt a chill down her spine. In all the drawings, there was no mother figure. The door to the room inside opened. A woman around 40 years old stepped out, her hair neatly tied back and a serious face with a name tag. Catherine Shea, social worker. "Mrs. Lawrence?" Emma nodded slightly. "Yes, I called this morning. Thank you for coming. I want to prepare you for a few things." Catherine sat down next to her, her voice calm but with a hint of caution. "The girl, currently named Leah, is still in a very sensitive state. We cannot officially confirm her identity yet. That will require DNA testing." "Of course," Emma replied. "I understand, but I didn't come here to claim my daughter. I just want to meet her." The social worker nodded slowly. "Then please follow me. But please note, don't ask her if she remembers anything. Don't call her any name other than Leah, and if she gets anxious, we will have to stop." Emma followed Catherine down a long hallway. The frosted glass windows showed the shadows of quiet figures, some drawing, some looking out at the garden, some sitting on the floor in corners. All carried a heavy silence, as if language no longer had any effect here. They stopped in front of the room at the end of the hall. Catherine gently opened the door. "Leah, someone wants to talk to you for a bit." A girl was sitting at a table, her back turned. Long hair, slightly messy, a baggy gray sweater. On the table was a blank sheet of paper and a short pencil. The girl didn't turn around, but when she heard the door open, her hand froze for a second. Then she continued to move again. Emma walked in, holding her breath slightly. "Hello?" No response. She sat down opposite her. Now she could see the girl's face clearly, a pale complexion, large eyes, slightly unfocused pupils, her eyelashes drooping, covering most of her expressions. That face, there was no doubt. She had kissed that face every night. "Do you like to draw?" Emma asked, her eyes glancing down at the paper. A word was drawn over and over, dozens of times, in all styles. Uppercase, lowercase, crooked, lopsided, all the same name, Leah. The girl still said nothing. Her fingers gripped the pencil, slightly trembling. Her movement was uncertain, as if she did not know if she was allowed to write it. Emma took a deep breath, keeping her voice gentle as if talking to an old friend. "I used to have 2 twin daughters. One of them loved writing her name on paper. Every time she was angry with her sister, she would sit and draw her name until the page was full. She smiled, trying not to let her voice break. I used to say, "You write too much, your name will wear out." Leah's eyes flickered slightly, not looking straight, but something in her expression wavered like water being gently disturbed. "Her name was Ellie," Emma said, her voice so soft it was like a lullaby. "Twin sister of Elena." A flash of confusion appeared on Leah's face. Very quickly, the girl turned to Catherine. "Daddy said, don't listen to strangers." Leah spoke for the first time. Her voice was as dry as gravel, but clear and trembling. "Daddy said, they'll take me away." Emma almost took the girl's hand but stopped herself in time. "No one is taking you anywhere," she whispered. "You are safe. No one can hurt you here." Leah pulled her hand back, as if afraid the pencil would betray her too. Her left hand still gripped the edge of the paper. Emma paused. Left hand. Ellie was also left-handed. Not clear proof, but a small piece falling into place. Emotion welled up, like water suddenly overflowing its banks. "Leah, do you like to draw?" Emma changed her voice, softer. Ellie used to love to draw. But she hated pink, hated wearing lace dresses. She had to wear the same clothes as her sister and would frown all day. Leah still didn't answer, but her hand slowly drew another Leah, this time smaller, weaker, like a child learning to write herself again. Catherine gently placed her hand on Emma's shoulder. "We should stop for today." Emma nodded slightly. She stood up, her eyes still following the girl sitting at the table. "I won't go far. I'll stay in this town for a few days. If you want to talk, just ask Catherine." Leah didn't look up. But just as Emma turned away, she heard a very small voice, as faint as the wind passing her shoulder. "Did Mom have red hair?" Emma whirled around, but Leah had bowed her head. Her hand continued to draw another Leah, as if nothing had happened. Catherine looked at her. "You misheard." "Maybe," Emma said, but in her heart, something had just been kindled. A small spark, fragile, but real, and enough to keep her from giving up. Not this time, not again. The therapy room was painted pale blue, bright and almost too quiet. No one-way mirrors, no obvious recording devices. Just a wooden table, two chairs facing each other, and soft light shining down from the frosted glass window. Leah sat there, her eyes wide, looking into the distance as if the wall in front of her contained a whole world that only she could see. This was the 4th therapy session in 2 weeks. Catherine Shea, still the main person in charge, had learned one thing. Never ask Leah directly, "Who are you?" That question made her shrink like a leaf being touched. Instead, they started with simple things. Colors, drawings, breathing. "Leah," Catherine said softly, as if talking to a bird afraid of humans. "Can you tell me about a dream today?" Leah was silent for a long time. Her fingers fiddled with the fringe on the hem of her sweater. She continued to ask Leah, "When you say Daddy, do you remember his face?" Leah nodded slightly. "He has gray hair, eyes not like yours, cold hands, but when he gets angry, his hands are as hot as fire. Did you ever ask Daddy why you couldn't go to school, couldn't go outside?" "I asked. He said there were monsters out there, and my mom was one of them." Catherine looked up. "He ever talk about your mother?" Leah shook her head. Number didn't say her name, just said Mom abandoned me, that Mom didn't choose me. A long silence followed. Catherine pushed a piece of paper and a box of crayons towards the girl. "Do you want to draw something today?" Leah slowly picked up a crayon. Her hand was slightly shaking. She didn't draw her name this time. Instead, the crayon went in a circle, then 2 circles, a figure, then a second figure, identical, holding hands. As Catherine leaned in for a closer look, she realized the 2 children were standing close together on a cliff, Below were dark, swirling strokes, like wind or flowing water. Both faces had no eyes, no noses. But one of them was turning towards the other, pushing her gently from behind. "Who are you drawing?" Catherine asked softly. Leah didn't answer. The next day, Emma was allowed to attend part of a therapy session at the doctor's suggestion, in an observational role. She sat in the corner of the room, saying nothing. Leah knew she was there, but didn't look, didn't say hello, just focused on her drawing. When Catherine asked about the first memory she could remember, Leah bit her lip. "I remember a song," she said, unsure. "Every night someone sang me a song." Catherine nodded. "Do you remember the lyrics?" Leah sang softly. Her voice was unsteady, like a child learning to pronounce words for the first time. "You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy when skies are gray." Emma froze. "That's very cute," Catherine smiled. "Did you ever see anyone else sing that song?" "Number only in the bunker," Leah replied. "When the power went out, I was afraid of the dark. Daddy sat next to me and sang." At this point, Emma spoke, for the first time. "Do you believe it was a song your mother sang?" Leah turned her head. Her eyes were still strange, but no longer frightened. "I think so." Emma took a deep breath. "My mother never sang. Impossible. Not even lullabies. She used stories instead of songs." Leah looked at her as if the whole world had just tilted slightly. "But I remember. I'm sure." Catherine intervened, her voice gentle. "Memories are sometimes created by things other people say many times, Leah. Especially if those things are repeated every day." "But I remember the tune. Remember every word," Leah whispered. "Did you remember the tune in the dark or in the light?" Emma asked softly. Leah paused. "Darkness. And you were afraid of the dark?" The girl nodded. Emma said very slowly, "Then maybe it wasn't a lullaby, but a cage." The next day, when Catherine opened the patient's portfolio of drawings, she found another drawing, placed separately. Not a bunker scene. Not the name Leah, like every time. This drawing showed two children standing in front of a car. One of them was lying down. Blood spread red. The other one was running. In the distance was a figure, tall, holding something like an iron bar. Further away was a stream, winding, dark. There were no words on the painting, but the strokes were agonizing, hurried, and all drawn with the left hand. Catherine showed it to Emma. The girl doesn't remember her name, doesn't remember her birthday, but her hands don't lie. Emma took the paper. She touched the crayon, her hand trembling. Ellie is left-handed, always has been, and people can't pretend to draw with their non-dominant hand, especially when they are recalling unconsciously. That evening, Leah was awakened by a dream. She sat up in bed, cold sweat running down her back. The nightlight cast a yellow glow on the wall. She turned her head, looking into the darkness where the window was. It felt like someone was whispering her name, not Leah, but another name, buried deep in her memory. Ellie. She whispered the word in her mouth, once, then twice, not familiar, but not foreign, just not enough faith to call herself by that name. Not yet, but close, very close. Hanover, autumn afternoon 2024. Leaves began to fall sporadically on the path leading to the old house, each brick, each window pane carrying a thick layer of dust from time. But in the quiet light shining through the trees, it still retained the shape of a home, even if it was a home without laughter. Emma stepped across the creaking wooden porch, opening the door with the old key that she always wore around her neck like an unbreakable habit. After returning from New York, she was uneasy. The image of Leah, the left-handed drawings, were like broken pieces of glass reflecting a face that was slowly becoming clear. But something was missing, a void that she herself could not fill if she only looked at the present. The truth, if it remained, had to be in the past. She opened the low cabinet under the attic, where she used to keep files, letters, and old articles about the accident that year. The last drawer held a wooden box, already faded. Inside were pages from her own diary, slanted handwriting, stained with old tears, and a stack of newspaper clippings clipped together with rusty staples. One article stood out, an interview with witnesses to the 2009 accident. Among them, the name Rick Palmer appeared with the quote, "I heard a loud noise, like the roar of a car, then a crash. I ran out and saw smoke rising from the slope near the forest. It seemed they lost their brakes." Emma squinted. Lost their brakes? She blamed herself for not noticing this abnormality at the time. Lost brakes. That was a word that no one in the family or the police had ever made public. The post-accident investigation concluded that it was due to an unspecified technical error. Information about the loosened brake system was not shared with the press, according to the police officer in charge of the case that year. So, how did Rick know? She turned a few more pages. Another article, handwritten notes by Emma. Rick excluded due to lack of specific evidence. Old mental health record, unable to work since 2006. That name had passed through her mind as a reclusive, quiet neighbor, neither friendly nor hateful, just too quiet. Suddenly she remembered, that year, Elena once said, "Uncle Rick doesn't like strangers near the backyard. He has a bell that rings whenever anyone steps on the rocks." Emma used to laugh, telling her daughter she was imagining things. But not now. It was dusk when Emma stood in front of Rick Palmer's house. It had been abandoned since Rick disappeared from town. The roof tiles were crooked, the windows were boarded up, the grass grew thick like a torn cloak covering the traces of a crime that no one had ever suspected. She slipped through the rickety wooden fence. Under her feet, the gravel crunched as if something was stirring under the ground. Her eyes looked down at the path leading to the back and froze. A faded piece of fabric, half buried under the loose soil, stuck out like a small hand, crying for help. Emma bent down, digging gently. It was a bracelet. Small, soft plastic, with letter beads spelling out the name E-L-L-I-E. There was no mistaking it. She remembered clearly because she had personally threaded each bead onto the elastic cord, giving it to her daughter for her 6th birthday. Emma's hands trembled, feeling the wind blow through her thin coat as if the whole space was freezing. It wasn't a feeling of fear, but a feeling of belatedness, that she should have seen this long ago, that there had once been a call that had been forgotten right behind her house, and she, in too much pain, had not turned around. There was a creak of an iron gate. A voice rang out from the neighbor's side of the fence. "Are you looking for something?" Emma startled. An old man with white hair, leaning on a cane, was standing under a tree. "I'm sorry. I'm just trying to find some important things that belong to me." The man nodded. "I remember. Your 2 twin daughters. The curly-haired girl always rode her bike around the post office, and the other girl always stood by the fence, a little quieter. They were both very cute." Emma choked back tears. Do you remember anything about the house over there?" The old man frowned. "Rick Palmer? That weirdo. I remember. No one was friendly with him, always kept his doors closed. But one time, I thought I heard something." "What was it?" "A scream. A child's voice. Like someone falling, then being gagged. I thought about calling the police, but when I went back again, there was nothing. I thought I must have been imagining things. A lot of people in this neighborhood used to say he had hallucinations, a history of mental illness, who wanted to get involved." Emma swallowed. Her chest felt tight between regret and anger. "Did you see any strange children going in and out of that house?" "Number, but every time there was a delivery, the mailman always said, he always came out to get it very quickly, as if he was afraid someone would see inside." Emma nodded her thanks. She turned around, walking slowly towards the road leading back to her house. In her hand, she clutched the small plastic bracelet as proof, each letter bead stabbed into her palm like an accusation. There used to be a child here. Used to be locked up. Used to cry for help. And the whole town, including her, hadn't heard. That night, Emma didn't sleep. She sat at the table, reopening all the case files, writing down every detail. For the first time, she had no more doubts, no more faint hopes, but anger. Anger at herself. Anger at the one who caused it all. And anger at the way fate forced good people to remain silent for too long. Leah, Ellie, her daughter, had been so close, right across the fence, right behind that too-quiet house. A week after Emma found the bracelet on the path behind Rick Palmer's house, the FBI arrived in Hanover. No sirens, no body armor, no guns like in the movies, just gray cars parked quietly in front of the abandoned house. As if justice came in silence, because the screams had echoed here long ago. The area was sealed off. Security fences were erected, preventing residents from getting close. But Emma, with the bracelet in her pocket and eyes that had burned away any doubts, was allowed to stand outside and watch. She didn't want to leave. Couldn't. An FBI agent named Moore, middle-aged, stocky, was the main point of contact with Emma. He didn't ask many questions, just said one thing when he saw her. "Mrs. Lawrence, thank you for not giving up." The search began on the ground floor. Thick dust covered everything, cobwebs everywhere, nothing significant except an old house forgotten by time. But then they found the bunker door, the entrance disguised behind a wooden bookcase in the living room. The door led down by concrete steps, deep, gloomy, and with a pungent odor like decades of decay. When the flashlight shone down, a room appeared. Low ceiling, no windows, no ventilation. Just a dim yellow light bulb hanging by a rotten rope. The walls were painted blue, but the paint had peeled off, revealing cold gray concrete underneath. Along the wall were dolls, dozens of them, lined up, empty eyes, some with slashed bellies, stuffed with scribbled paper. Next to them were children's clothes, neatly arranged on the shelves like a toy store, each item smaller than the size of a 7-year-old girl. A small bookcase was filled with coloring books, workbooks, and fairy tales, all with the word LIA underlined, circled, or repeated until the paper was worn out. In the drawer under the wooden table, the FBI also found a carefully arranged file, not financial documents or technical manuals, but personal files. Name, age, estimated height, hair color, eye color, all children. Some were crossed out in red, noted unsuitable, too big, or simply cries too much. Among them, there were 4 unnamed files but with photos cut out from the newspapers, yellowed black and white copies, pasted on craft paper with slanted handwriting, potential candidates. Moore flipped through each page, feeling a chill run down his spine. There was no doubt Ellie wasn't the first target and probably wouldn't be the last if she hadn't been discovered. Rick had created a system, silent, detailed, sick, to choose a child, like a man planning an ideal haunted family. He was not simply a kidnapper. He was the architect of an alternate world and willing to destroy as many lives as it took to build it from the ashes of lost children. At the same time, Catherine conducted a deep therapy session with Ellie. Now she was starting to talk more, although still vague between real and false memories. When Catherine showed Ellie some images from the bunker, the girl's voice went astray. "This is where I used to sleep, in that corner, under that light. Do you remember how long you were there?" "Long. I don't remember. But I had a calendar. Daddy didn't let me count, but I marked it myself with crayons on the back of a book," she said and pointed to a fairy tale book in the pile of evidence. Moore checked. Indeed, on the back of the cover, there were more than 150 small dashes, arranged in rows. Maybe days, maybe months. But it couldn't be a child's game. Then Ellie told about her only escape attempt. "I waited until Daddy dozed off. I was a little older then. I could open the bunker door. I ran, very far, through some bushes. Someone saw me, a man with a gun, hunting. I shouted, "Help me, I'm locked up." He looked at me, but then I said the wrong thing. "What did you say, Ellie?" I said, "I ran away from Daddy." He asked, "Are you sure?" Then I nodded. He took me back. Catherine was speechless. I don't know why. I thought adults would know. When Moore heard that detail, he had the area that had been used for hunting near Hanover in 2015 searched. One name came up: Mark Daly, who had reported a lost child returned to her father near a private campsite. He wasn't investigated because his testimony matched the file. Father and daughter got separated. Emma heard that and choked. An opportunity. A single time. And the girl had touched the light, only to be brought back into the darkness. On the hard drive, the FBI also found a video file. Not a recording, but an audio clip playing back a voice. A middle-aged male voice, cold, articulate, repeating, "Only Daddy left. You were abandoned. You have no one. Only Daddy left. Leah is no one else. Leah is Daddy's daughter. If you think differently, you will be swallowed by the darkness." Emma was not allowed to listen to the recording. But just looking at Agent Moore's face when he walked out of the interrogation room was enough to understand. It was something that made people unable to sleep that night. When shown the items in the bunker, Ellie recognized a white dress with embroidered flowers on the hem. She said softly, "Daddy said that was the dress Mom used to wear. So I had to wear it, to look like Mom. Because Leah is Mom." Catherine suppressed a sob. The truth was clear. This was not just a kidnapping. This was a deliberate brainwashing, lasting nearly 15 years, carried out by a man with insane fantasies, but a clear, organized, and cold-blooded plan. The bunker was not just a place of confinement. It was a place to recreate a world where there was only a Daddy, a Leah, and a lie that was repeated until it became the truth in the child's mind. Ellie had lived like that, had grown up in that atmosphere, had believed completely that she was not Ellie, and now pieces of the true memory were returning. Each layer of Rick's disguise was shattering. There was only one thing that wasn't clear. Had any other children ever called him Daddy? The therapy room that day had no sunlight. Clouds hung low in the sky. Mist hung over the window like a thin curtain separating the outside world from the memories that were slowly rising. Ellie sat at the table, not drawing her name as usual. Instead, she quietly slid the pencil across the blank page, each line, each shadow, each line uncertain but poignant. Catherine, from across the room, didn't ask anything. She had learned that being silent at the right time was the only way for memories to find their way back. "Do you have a sister?" Ellie asked suddenly, without looking up. "Yes," Catherine replied gently. "We argued a bit sometimes, but she was always the one who protected me." Ellie nodded slightly, still not looking, still drawing. "I have a feeling. Someone used to protect me," she continued, her voice so low it was almost a whisper. "But at the time I thought it was a dream. Can you draw that person?" Ellie nodded, then turned the paper towards Catherine. Two girls, one hugging the other from behind, pushing her away from a tilting car. The drawing was simple, crude, but in each trembling line there was something almost suffocating. "The hair." Catherine pointed to the long, slightly curled dark brown hair. "Whose is it?" "Elena," Ellie said softly. She shouted, told me, "Get out of here, Ellie," then pushed me hard, very hard. What happened after that? I fell, slipped down the slope, hit my head on a rock, then I don't remember anything. Catherine nodded, her hand lightly gripping her notebook, but not writing anything. She felt this was the time for someone else. That afternoon, Emma was called to the center earlier than usual. When she walked into the room, Ellie was sitting with her head bowed by the window. On her lap was another drawing, drawn with crayons this time. bright, vivid, and deeply sad. The picture depicted the accident from years ago. The silver SUV teetering on the winding slope, the wheels smoking. A small figure fell out, still holding the hand of someone else, who was lying crumpled on the ground, blood spreading around her head. Emma was speechless. "Are you drawing Elena?" she asked softly, her heart pounding like a drum. Ellie nodded. She was awake. After the car stopped, she opened the door. At that time I was stuck in the car. She pulled me out, then pushed me rolling down, said, "You have to live. Mom needs you." Emma couldn't hold back her tears. "But the police said her body was found outside the car." She paused. Then everything slowly came together like a piece of a forgotten puzzle. "Outside the car," she repeated. "Not in the car like everyone thought." Catherine slowly opened the file that had been recorded in 2009. That's right. The scene report states, Elena was found 4 meters away from the car, hit her head, possibly from slipping on the rocks after the accident. No one knows exactly why she was outside. Emma almost slumped into her chair. She covered her face, not because of the pain, but because of knowing a truth that was more sacred than anything. Elena, her older daughter, had lived. After the crash, after the chaos. The girl had woken up, had been strong enough to open the door, to crawl out, to save her sister. "Your sister didn't let you go alone," Emma whispered, tears streaming down like the first rain of the season. "Even when she only had a few minutes left, she thought of you first." Ellie didn't cry, but she clenched her hand, the hand that had been manipulated by so many wrong memories. Now she knew. That hand had been held by her sister, pulled out of death, pushed towards the light. That night, Emma searched for something she had never dared to look at. Elena's school bag, kept intact in the bedroom for 15 years. Inside was a small diary, purple cover, with a picture of 2 little girls wearing the same dress. One page near the end, shaky writing, "Going on a picnic tomorrow." Ellie is sulking again because she has to wear a matching dress. But she doesn't know Mom has packed extra strawberry-flavored cookies for her. "I'll give her the right window seat like last time. As long as Ellie smiles, I can do anything." Emma closed the book, her hand placed on her daughter's name as if she was seeing her off for the second time. But this time with gratitude. No more resentment, no more self-blame, but love to the bone because she knew that her little girl had done something no one expected, saving her sister with her life. The next morning, Ellie woke up from a dream, different from her usual nightmares. This time, Elena stood under the trees of the forest, wearing the purple dress from the picnic. Her smile was still the same, calm and protective. "Go," she said in her dream. "You found your way back. I'm still here, but you have to live for my share too." Ellie nodded in her dream. And when she woke up, for the first time in 15 years, she sat up without trembling from the darkness. Because now, she knew. Elena never let go. Not in the past, and certainly not in the memories that are still alive. One morning colder than usual, not because of the weather. The sky in Hanover was still clear, but inside Ellie's heart, or rather inside the shell of her mind, was a mess of things that were both surfacing and sinking, like mud being churned up after a long rain. The therapy session that day had another person, Dr. Abram Lynn, a psychologist specializing in false memory syndrome, who had worked with many victims of long-term imprisonment and mind manipulation. Not wearing a lab coat, he sat down like a quiet old father, placing a cup of herbal tea in front of Ellie and smiling kindly. "You don't need to remember exactly, just tell me what you believe is true." Ellie nodded, hesitating. "I remember Mom singing me, 'You Are My Sunshine.' I'm sure. I remember her voice clearly. I remember Mom stroking my hair." Abram didn't deny it. He only asked, "When did your mother sing?" "At night, in the bunker. Before or after there was the small yellow light hanging from the ceiling." Ellie paused. "After." Abram glanced quickly at Catherine, then asked, Do you remember how many pillows were on the bed at that time? 3. And what was your mother's name? Ellie pursed her lips, then replied immediately, Joanne. The answer made the air in the room heavy. Emma, who was allowed to observe the therapy session from the next room, almost stood up, but she couldn't. This was a truth that needed to be faced, not rejected. Dr. Lin gently, Ellie, you know what you just said is part of a memory you believe is true. But sometimes, people's minds, especially when they are young, can be programmed like computers. I don't understand. Rick replaced another memory in your blank space, not just erasing. He replaced it with a new story, with details, with voices, with habits. Ellie bowed her head. But I remember my mother's scent, remember her hands. And you remember your mother writing in her diary with you every night? She nodded. So do you remember writing with which hand? The right hand. Abram smiled sadly. But you are left-handed. Ellie felt like she had been slapped in the face. She looked down at her hand, her left hand, clutching the hem of her shirt. How many times had she had to hide her clumsiness when writing with her right hand, scolded for writing messily? How many times had Rick made her practice writing again because he thought, Leah writes with her right hand. Only monsters use their left hand. She had believed it and practiced, forgetting that she was left-handed. Catherine presented a drawing found in the bunker. Crayon drawing, naive strokes. A man and a girl standing next to a wooden house, holding a cake, the sun in the sky, flowers on the ground. At the bottom was a bold, awkward line. Leah's family. Daddy loves you. Do you remember this picture? Catherine asked. Ellie nodded. I drew it. Once a week. Daddy taught me. Were you allowed to draw anything else? Number only allowed to use 3 colors, red, yellow, blue. Daddy said, those are the colors of happiness. Other colors make Leah sad. At the end of the therapy session, Ellie was taken to her room. There, Emma was waiting. No longer the patient, gentle mother as always. Her face today clearly showed the pain, but the pain of injustice, suffocation, powerlessness. You don't remember your sister's name? Emma asked softly, almost not daring to believe it. Ellie bowed her head. I only remember someone, always walking behind me, always saying, don't get lost. But I don't remember her name. Emma swallowed. Elena. Her name was Elena. Was the first one to know you were left-handed. Was the one who told me not to force you to wear lace dresses. Was the one who soothed you every time you fell off your bike. Don't you remember anything about Elena? Ellie was silent. Then exclaimed, choking, why do I only remember Joanne? Emma didn't answer. She walked over, sat next to her daughter, put her arm around her trembling shoulders. It's not your fault. It's never your fault. There are some people who don't just want to take your body, but also want to take your soul. Rick didn't just lock you in the bunker, he locked you in his story. Ellie burst into tears. For the first time, she cried like a child. No longer the tears of panic, but tears of self-loathing. Because for 10 years, she had called a man Daddy, had thought her name was Leah, had drawn happy family pictures with 3 awkward colors, while her real sister lay cold under the ground. After that day, Ellie asked to stay alone with the artifacts recovered from the bunker, not to reminisce, but to confront. She looked at the diaries forced to be written with her right hand and picked up a pen. She began to write with her left hand. The first line, trembling. My name is Ellie. I have a mother. I have a sister. Joanne is not my mother. Rick is not my father. That evening, when Emma left the center, she turned back to look at the building one last time. She knew her daughter would never be the same again. But she also knew the girl was gradually reclaiming herself. No longer a shadow filled with wrong memories. No longer Leah, the unreal girl, but Ellie, flesh and blood, with real memories, with anger and love returning in every clear beat of her heart. The interrogation room was in the basement of the Grafton County Police Department's detention area, the dim yellow lights shining rigidly on Rick Palmer's emotionless face. No handcuffs, no screams. Just a man with disheveled salt and pepper hair, sitting motionless like a stone statue, his eyes staring straight at the cold metal tabletop. 3 days before that day's interrogation, Rick Palmer was arrested on a damp morning as he was preparing to load old duffel bags into the trunk of a faded silver sedan parked in front of his house. He was wearing an old leather jacket, a wool hat pulled down over his ears even though it wasn't cold. An unremarkable appearance, except for one detail. The car had temporary license plates, and in his hand was a certificate of registration to purchase a wooden cabin in the forests of Canada, near the border. When the federal task force and state police burst in, Rick didn't resist. He turned around, raised both hands, his eyes not surprised, not afraid, but as if disappointed at being interrupted. When he was handcuffed, he said only one sentence to the escort. "We could have waited a few more days. She's not ready to leave yet." That sentence, when reanalyzed, made Moore shudder. It wasn't that he didn't know Ellie would leave, but that he believed he still had time to win her back. That calmness was the clearest sign that the monster wasn't in the screams, but in the composure of someone who thought he was in love. Agent Moore opened the file. Catherine and a district attorney stood behind a one-way mirror, taking notes. The interrogation wasn't intended to force a confession, but to listen, to hear who that person, the one who had made a child lose 15 years of her life, saw himself as. "Mr. Palmer," Moore began, his voice calm. "Do you know why you're here?" Rick didn't answer immediately. His eyes were still fixed on an invisible point in front of him. Then, after a while, he said, his voice hoarse like a rusted machine, "I was just taking back the child that God had stolen from me." Moore nodded, not objecting. "We found Ellie Lawrence in your bunker. Don't you see that as kidnapping?" Rick smirked, a smile that wasn't clear whether it was happy or painful. "Ellie is no longer Ellie. That girl died. Leah is real. Leah is my daughter." "Leah doesn't exist, Mr. Palmer." Rick raised his head, looking Moore in the eyes for the first time. That look made Catherine behind the glass involuntarily step back. In those cloudy eyes there was no madness, no anger, just absolute certainty. That was the most terrifying thing. "Joanne used to be pregnant," Rick said, his voice lower. "A daughter. We named her Liana. But then, she left, without saying a word. Took my child away from this world. I waited, 10 years, 20 years, prayed. Then one day I saw Ellie. It was like God sent her. It was a sign. A redemption." Moore didn't respond, just turned to a page in the file. "We found letters you wrote to Joanne. More than 30, not sent. Beautiful handwriting. The content? Strange." Rick nodded slightly. "I wrote to her every month, told her about Leah. She needed to know her daughter was okay, still alive, still loved her parents." "But Leah isn't your daughter." Rick threw his head back, laughing dryly. "Who says she isn't? The girl has forgotten everything, hasn't she? Doesn't remember her real mother, doesn't remember her sister, doesn't remember her name. I gave her a new name, a new life, taught her to love, to study, to sing. You taught her by locking her in a windowless bunker, by making her write diaries with her right hand even though she's left-handed, by telling her only Daddy left. You think that's love?" Rick was silent for a moment. Then he put his hands on the table, whispering like a prayer. "The girl needed a world without betrayal. I created that world." Moore stopped writing, looking into his eyes again. "Do you admit you are guilty?" Rick pursed his lips, then smiled, a smile that cracked from a fissure that had existed for too long. "Guilty? I was just trying to fix what God did wrong. Everyone thinks they're right. So do I." After the interrogation, as Rick was led out of the room, Emma, who was shown the video from the camera, sat silently outside the evidence processing room. She had prepared to hate. But what she felt wasn't anger, but a chill mixed with pity. Rick Palmer wasn't a predator lurking in the deep forest, not a demon lurking through the night. He was an ordinary man, haunted by a loss that he wasn't strong enough to heal, and in his loneliness, he had molded a distorted world where he was the father, the lord, the victim, and the hero. The danger wasn't in the madness, but in the absolute rationality in the delusion. A week later, the FBI re-examined Rick Palmer's entire buying and transaction history for 15 years. They found dozens of books on raising children, light hypnosis techniques, and even theological textbooks on the sacred responsibility of the father. There were handwritten notes in the margins of the books, emphasizing passages. Children remember nothing if they are continuously isolated for 30 days, or recreate memories with music and repetition. Rick hadn't acted impulsively. He studied, planned, practiced the role of good father for years before acting. The district attorney, in a press conference afterward, concluded, "Rick Palmer isn't simply mentally ill. He knew what he was doing. He's not crazy. He just no longer has a boundary between real and fake, and that's the most terrible crime." A few days later, Ellie was informed. Rick would be tried in federal court, with charges including kidnapping, unlawful imprisonment, emotional abuse of a minor, and obstruction of the investigation process. The sentence could be life in prison. When Catherine asked, "Do you want to testify?" Ellie shook her head. "I don't want to talk to him anymore." "Because you're afraid?" "No," Ellie replied, "because he's no longer worthy of hearing my name." And in those eyes, no longer the girl robbed of her memories, but a young woman gradually regaining control of her life, piece by piece, breath by breath, word by word. Courtroom 3 of the New Hampshire Federal Court that morning wasn't crowded or noisy. Everyone who came sat quietly, no one spoke. Partly because the case was so clear in terms of evidence, but mostly because everyone knew. Today's trial was no longer a place of punishment, but a place where a person returned to herself. Ellie walked in from the door on the left. The early sunlight shone through the high windows, shining on her face. A beauty that was not radiant, not arrogant, but so solid that it made people silent. Her hair was tied neatly behind her neck, her eyes no longer avoiding, her hands no longer trembling. Emma sat in the second row, not moving. Next to her was Catherine, her eyes on the verge of breaking with pride. Rick Palmer was already present, handcuffed but not bowing his head. He sat up straight, wearing a gray prison uniform, a slight smile on his face as if he was waiting for someone familiar to walk into a family gathering. When Ellie approached, he nodded to her as if greeting a daughter. Ellie didn't look back. She just walked to the witness stand, stood up straight, and answered the oath of the court clerk in a clear voice. Judge Chambers, a seasoned man with a stern face and metal-rimmed glasses, looked at Ellie for a long time. In those eyes was compassion, but not leniency. "Ms. Ellie Lawrence," he said, "before the court pronounces the sentence, you have the right to speak. What do you want to say to the defendant?" The courtroom was silent. The sound of the ventilation fan on the ceiling seemed to slow down. Ellie took a deep breath. She didn't turn to Rick. She looked straight ahead, as if talking to herself at some point, in a windowless bunker. "I used to think my name was Leah," she began. "I used to call a man daddy. I used to believe that my mother abandoned me, that I had no sister, that the world out there was something dark, terrible, and not meant for me." She paused for a beat, to let those words sink in. "But now I know. That's not the truth. That's the story of someone else, stuffed into my head, repeated over and over, until I forgot my own voice." Then, Ellie turned her head slightly, not to look at Rick, but to look through him, as if he was a shadow that had been left behind in an ancient memory. "You used to tell me, only Daddy left. But the truth is, only I am left. And I didn't die." She raised her head higher, her voice without a tremor. I'm not Leah. I'm Ellie Lawrence. Rick frowned slightly. His mouth moved, but no words came out. I have a mother, Ellie continued, her voice starting to warm up, who waited for me for 15 years, never stopped looking for me, didn't give up even though everyone told her she should learn to let go. I have a sister, Elena, who died to save me, pushed me out of the car that was plunging into the abyss, chose to lose herself so that I could live on. She paused, looking towards Emma. Two pairs of eyes met, and Emma nodded slightly as if, you keep talking. I'm still here. And I will live, Ellie said clearly. Not because of you, not to take revenge, but to do what my sister couldn't. I will relearn what was lost. Will write with my left hand. Will eat strawberry-flavored cookies. Will go outside without fear of the sun. Will call my name, loudly, every time I stand in front of the mirror. Ellie Lawrence, daughter of Michael and Emma, sister of Elena. No one applauded. No one cried aloud, but the entire trial seemed to freeze, as if time stood still to engrave those words. Rick bowed his head. For the first time, he wasn't smiling. He didn't cry, didn't speak, didn't react, just simply silent. In that silence, everything he had once believed, the fantasy world he had created, the character Leah he had molded, collapsed piece by piece. Ellie stepped down from the witness stand. Moore, standing near the door, looked at her and nodded slightly. Catherine softly pulled out a tissue. Emma whispered, "My daughter." But her voice was too soft for others to hear. Judge Chambers pronounced the sentence, life imprisonment, no parole. Not because Rick was evil, but because he didn't think he was wrong. After the trial, Ellie didn't turn back. She walked out of the courthouse, where the sun had covered the white stone steps. The wind blew gently. The scent of lavender from the nearby park seeped into the air. A group of reporters was ready but separated by barriers and police. Ellie didn't answer any questions. She just stopped for a moment, standing on the highest step, taking a deep breath, as if marking her second birth. That night, Emma placed 3 photos on the table as usual, Michael, Elena, and Ellie. But for the first time in 15 years, she added a new photo. It was a picture of Ellie wearing a white shirt, her hair neatly tied back, standing in front of the courthouse. Her eyes were no longer fearful, but affirmative, steady, as if speaking for all the words of a painful journey that had ended. I have returned, and I will never be locked up again. Summer in Hanover returned as if there had never been a tragedy. The young maples sprouted new leaves, green and thin as silk. The sun streamed over the edge of the wooden house at the end of town, shining down on the porch where a swing gently swayed in the early morning breeze. On the swing, Ellie sat reading a book, not a therapy book, nor investigation documents or files. It was a collection of stories for children. Anne of Green Gables, an old print that her mother had kept since the 2 sisters were young. She was relearning everything, each page of the book, each number, each historical event that her faint memories couldn't fully retain. But more importantly, she was relearning how to be a person not called by a fake name, not living in the dark, not afraid of footsteps on the wooden stairs every night. The room upstairs used to be where the 2 twin children slept together. For the past 15 years, it had hardly changed, except that the dust was thicker, the curtains more faded, and the toys untouched. But this summer, that room had come back to life. Emma and Ellie cleaned together. They repainted the walls, changed the curtains, rearranged the old bookcase. Ellie wanted that place to become a reading room, a private corner to study, to draw, to write, to feel that she was no longer swallowed by the ghost of memory. On the east wall, Ellie pasted a painting, the old drawing that had made her wonder why she had drawn it. 2 girls holding hands before the abyss, one protecting the other with her small body. This time, she clearly wrote 2 names below, Elena and Ellie, born together, never separated. Emma didn't ask much. She gave her daughter her own space. But every morning, when making tea, she always put an extra cup for Ellie. Every afternoon, when watering the plants in the backyard, she called softly, "Do you want to eat strawberry-flavored cookies tonight?" And Ellie always smiled and nodded. One night in early July, close to the day that Emma brought flowers to the windowsill every year, Ellie opened the drawer, took out her left-handed diary, the 5th volume since the trial. She wrote, "Mom didn't give up. Not when the police said I was dead. Not when no one believed I was still alive. Mom kept my room intact. Mom kept my picture unchanged. Mom brings flowers every year, 3 flowers. And this year, I will bring one of them myself." July 14th. The sun was mild, no wind. Emma placed the 3 flowers on the windowsill as usual. Each flower was carefully chosen, not a luxurious or rare flower, but simple flowers, close to her family. A lilac for Michael, a white hydrangea for Elena. And this year, Ellie personally chose the 3rd flower, a small sunflower, still fresh with dew. "For Ellie," she said softly, then looked at her mother. But not Ellie who got lost, but Ellie who is alive, part of all 3 of us. Emma didn't answer. She just took her daughter's hand, squeezing it gently. They stood there for a long time, no need for more words. That night, the reading room was lit. On the desk, next to the nightlight, was a new photo frame. Not a photo of the past, but a photo of the present. Ellie and Emma were gardening, both wearing wide-brimmed hats, their smiles tilted under the afternoon sun. Ellie sat writing the last few lines in her diary, then closed it, placing it on the shelf next to the full volumes. She stretched, sighing with relief. A breath that didn't carry darkness, no longer the musty smell of the cold bunker, no longer the fake footsteps from the ceiling. She leaned back in her chair, watching the moonlight shine through the window, then whispered, not to her mother, not to the doctor, not to her sister, but to herself. "I used to be a child who was taken away, but I have returned. Not perfect, but real, and I have a place to return to." Outside, the summer night passed peacefully. In the wooden house that had experienced too many stormy seasons, the light was still on, small, gentle, but steadfast, like a heart revived after the storm. And in that place, among books, flowers, and the breath of 2 women mending time with love, no ghosts could reside any longer. Only light, and a flame that will never be extinguished.